Okay, people, good afternoon. Chris the Contemplative here, as always, to discuss some kind of holiday. Every once in a while, I always try to cover cultural holidays and take it to another level with various observations and insights. And hopefully, a little bit of sharing from the comments. It'd be nice. I know this isn't the best time zone anymore, not sure why, but it's always good to bounce off of you guys as well. And today's topic will be the death of Eros, which is in the title. What is Eros? Eros is romantic love, okay? There has been a complete attack on it in a very sneaky way. And quite honestly, it's about replacing romance with lust. It's not so much people just being naughty and standard impurity going on. I would say Blessed Fulton Sheen started seeing that. Everyone struggles with impurity, unless you're Mother Mary or something, and Jesus. But of course, Jesus was tempted. So, but everyone struggles with purity, and it's clearly been going on since the dawn of time. Okay, so let's not be prudes or holier than thou and acting like we have it all together. Let's be real, this is something that will never really go away. But there's a new cultural and political agenda going on to completely kill all idea of love through not just impurity, but sexual narcissism. That's a whole nother level. That is a demonic level that's going on where when it comes to the matters of sex between two people or whatever, it's all about pleasure. It's all about how we can satisfy ourselves. Welcome, Sweet and Romans. Good to have you here. That is a big problem. And that is ruining our world. It's ruining everything. Now, I know there's going to be some people that are going to watch this and they're going to act completely childish over here. They may in their heads, especially if they're young, they may joke, oh, and have a big clown mask on. Oh, funny sex, and everything on the internet seems to make a joke of this stuff. That, or they act like they don't have issues and wounds in this area in their own lives. Can we please be adults here? Especially if you're going into your 30s, like me, and you're interested in having a family, this whole thing of wearing this dumb clown mask all the time and acting like a middle schooler and acting so awkward and strange, you're just going to have to get over this, okay? We're all adults here. Not to mention, this is the battleground that's destroying modern Western culture. So we shouldn't be thinking of it as a funny little comedy skit, although there are some pretty funny comedy skits and some true ones. I put one of them in the description. But this is pretty serious. This is a war going on. So let's put on our big boy and girl pants, please. Let's not run away from it. For example, if I say to you that the Catholic Church is actually right in the center of romantic and sexual love, don't run away from that or think I'm a weirdo, okay? Yes, it is. That is what we do here on this channel. We are contemplatives, and contemplative spirituality includes the sensual, it includes all three forms of love, and every contemplative has to read and understand the Song of Songs, which we've been doing. This is at the heart of the nature of God. If you think this is, ew, it's yucky, it's icky, we don't want to go there. If you don't want to connect this with, let's say, the Eucharist or contemplative prayer or the Song of Songs, then you can just stay in the trough with everyone else in spiritual mediocre land, never get healing in these areas, never get happy, and keep believing that somehow God will magically make this go away. He's not going to make this go away. This is something we have to take on in ourselves and within the culture and ask God to heal us for those that are Christians tuning in. It will not go away from us hiding it and repressing it. And in fact, one day, Thomas and I may just do a broadcast on the porn problem alone. So I don't know about you, but I want to get my head right with this. I'm finding excellent literature on these issues, and I hope to bring a little bit of clarity. So, the first thing that we have to define is what love is, which is the first issue. And St. Valentine is up there. Hello, Elizabeth. Thanks for tuning in. St. Valentine is a patron saint of love in the church. It's what the holiday is based off of. And I just find it really interesting how people just seem to ignore St. Valentine so much, the guy who we're basing the name of the holiday off of. Perhaps it's because we have such a superficial understanding of love. We think it's kind of a ritual. When I mean love, I mean romantic love. We think it's a ritual where we spend time with our significant other and you won't be a complete and total jerk to them for one day or something, like kind of like an anniversary. Now, Valentine's Day is very important. In fact, I would say in terms of the culture, it's less sullied than Christmas and Halloween, namely because we're dealing with a primordial, very important drive, which is the love between men and women, and that just can't be robbed away so easily despite all the propaganda against it. It's just too powerful of a drive to completely eradicate from people's psyches. There are some pretty screwed up people that where it is almost gone. After enough conditioning and complete confusion, it is happening. But for the general populace, everyone seems to have an understanding of what this is about. And thank God for Valentine's Day. I used to kind of hate it because I thought it was superficial. It is superficial. All of our holidays have been dumbed down. I also, had angst where like, oh boy, this is where people that don't have Valentine's on Valentine's Day are gonna act like total pariahs or be treated like total pariahs and dirtbags and homeless people for not having someone on your arm. I'm over that now. It's still funny to laugh at, but it's an important thing. Of course, we need to have more depth. And the first thing is we need to, like I always say in my previous broadcast, we need to define our terms. There is a war on words. There is a war for your mind. And a little bit of confusion in how we define things can ruin your life. I'm not even joking. It can even ruin your entire spirituality. It can even help cut you off from God. And so it seems to me that when I look at all the definitions from theologians about what love is, as well as what the philosophers, like the Greek philosophers, what they say, they seem to define love as a spiritual truth. A spiritual truth is not the same as an intellectual truth. What that means is it's something that's supposed to resonate with the human emotions and soul that aligns us towards a higher good. And love aligns us towards all good when you think about it. Now, there are three different kinds of love: Eros, Phileo, and Agape. Eros, and these again are Greek terms, the church has incorporated this into their theology. Eros is romantic love. It is connected to beauty, it is connected to sensuality. We all know about that. That's what people think when they think of love in general. Filio is familial or friendship love, which is also very important. And then there's agape, which is sacrificial or heroic love. And all three of these, for a Christian, should work together as one. We'll get into that later. But those are the philosophical understandings of love. And when you think about it, these are spiritual truths, right? I mean, when Eros leads to a man and a woman eventually having a family and lifting up and supporting each other, it's a sacrament in the church, helping each other become better people. Filio, of course, you have family values, national values, camaraderie. It's always, of course, important to have a kind of love that's beyond romantic love that still brings people together under a common banner. And then you have heroic love, which is considered actually the most romantic of romances, where You have an unconditionality about it. You have a self-giving, no matter what. That is considered the height of all love, and that is considered the crowning attribute of God's love. And of course, having heroes, heroism is pretty important. So, see what I mean? These are spiritual truths. I know I was knocking the emotions a lot for the first few episodes. You can check out my broadcast. And I'm not trying to completely eradicate them. I'm trying to order them. When it comes to the matters of sex, it's actually more than an emotion. It leads towards a spiritual truth. And then there's the whole can of worms where, to the mystic, to the contemplative, and to the reality of the Catholic, sex is connected to connecting with God. One, because God is seen through the family. Two, because of the resurrection of the body, in which an energy will be infused in our body that will surpass all ecstasy. And it's ecstatic to see God, who is love, right? That's the third reason. God is love, as the scripture says. The divine Godhead's essence and character is love. And that means if he's infinite love, then experiencing him must surpass all forms of pleasure that we can have down here. And that's pretty important. So, if you didn't know this, bombs away. I just blew your whole mind. If you've been praying with us and listened to Thomas, not so shocking. You've been experiencing this. And you also have been reading theology, mystical theology, that completely backs up the whole thing. Now, not only is it important to know these things, it's also important to know that love is always connected to truth. Not only is it a spiritual truth, but truth and beauty seem to be like the boundaries around it. I mean, it would be twisted, and we see a lot of twisted relationships where there's no truth, there's just like a pleasure connecting them, or maybe an obsession, or some kind of psychological slavery to a fantasy, or a delusion. You have to have truth in these things. You have to have respect, you have to have dignity, or it loses its meaning very quickly. It also enhances the romance, which we'll do a quick mental exercise to prove my point. But truth and beauty are connected. I don't really think there's that many people. I mean, there's some messed up people, but the beauty of the human body inspires lots of things. And you can even say that other things inspire people to think about the human body, like flowers and music and anything good, and beautiful poetry. It all seems to be very connected. And it's very sad that you would never hear this anymore in our culture. For all the talk, for all of the mega billion, gajillion music industry, when you really listen to what they're saying, or these romance movies, that's not there anymore. It's just this fleeting drug high. It's just like, oh, well, I just love you and you love me, and we're going to do some crazy, ridiculous plot where we eventually end up together, which is kind of a parody of a kind of like a goofball, clownish way of looking at it. I think it's kind of demonic. It just seems that every time there's something serious that could happen, a demonic, like a demiurge seems to make people act ridiculous and retarded about it and mess it all up, whether it be in our personal lives or whenever it's in our culture. It always seems like we can't have the whole thing. Everything has to be separated. And this is very bad. Okay, when truth is separated from love, not only do we lose our sense of romance and everything becomes pretty messed up and fetishized and porno-y and all kinds of problems, but we also lose our sense, believe it or not, we lose our sense of right and wrong properly when we lose our sense of love mixed with truth. And this is why I have an issue with the Pharisaical, prudish kind of people, just as much as I have an issue with the reckless, abandoned people, like I mentioned on my last broadcast. Okay, so um, let's take, for example, the classic case of a man falling in love with a woman. A man falling in love with a woman, and of course, the woman falling in love with the man. The Eros inspires sacrifice. The beauty of each other's souls and bodies inspires them to defend what is good. It isn't perfect, okay? Eros usually starts very selfish, but that is true. It also inspires them to become selfless, especially when they start having children. And then that selflessness in loving their children helps them love each other. And it's a cycle thing going on. Now, what happens in our culture when we lose our sense of beauty and eros is we don't have a clear understanding of why something is bad. Because eros helps define higher good from a lesser good. All right. So, it's like, sadly, you go up to a Catholic even these days, and you go up to them and you ask, well, why is that wrong? Well, it's because the church tells us not to, and it's because I don't want to go to hell. All right, and this is the mediocrity that has kept us from being effective in the culture. The true answer is, and it's always been in the church, that sin is a twisted good. It keeps us from something even better. And not only does it affect our morality, but affects our relationship choices, right? So a lot of people are enslaved because they settle for less. They settle for a lesser good of some kind. You see this in relationships. This is why a lot of relationships are failing. So I hope I've laid out my philosophical point to what love is. I could do 5 more broadcasts. There's probably college seminars and theological seminars. There's even an encyclical. There's just endless amounts of writing. So this can only open up the discussion. Really, I'll try my best to talk about what I see, but there's just probably a whole lifetime's worth of information on the matters of the heart, which we don't have classical education anymore. No one gives a damn. So we're just becoming more screwed up the more we ignore this kind of thing. Let's see. All right, looks like Elizabeth and Sweet like what I'm saying. Okay, so moving on. What I see on the sociological lens, where did all of this messed up stuff come from? We have a 50+% divorce rate, despite the mega billion industry. We have men and women treating each other horribly. Of the marriages that we have, many are unhappy. That is a statistical fact, and Our Lady of Fatima complains about this. We have people not believing in the Eucharist or having any sort of connection with the divine love, so they're just super lonely. We have depression, which I think is being overly diagnosed as like just a brain problem. I think a lot of depression is psychosexual issues from pubescent formation. I know I'm getting Freudian here, but let's be real. Let's be real, okay? That is a main contingent of the angst. If anyone here have teenagers, I know we have some parents here. If you know teenagers or preteens even, we know that what the main angst issue usually is because of the hormones going on. Okay, and that's not being addressed. So at this point in the show, I'm going to get more esoteric. I'm going to get less sociological and talking about what I see in society and more internal. Because if we don't do this, not only do we avoid issues that we may need healing personally, that I still need healing personally, but we can't find wisdom in where this all came from. And we are going to have to go back. Okay. I think what's going on personally is as we approach the triumph of the Immaculate Heart, there's going to be some hell to pay, and the veil of deceit is going to be pretty traumatically ripped open. And a lot of people, whether or not they're living it out now or later, um, are going to realize that most of their life was a lie. They're going to realize that they were stuck in a stunted spiritual infancy, and they're going to realize that a house built on sand is not going to last. I think many already are realizing this. You can't BS this, okay? You can put as much makeup on the pig as you can. Eventually, the truth will come out, and that can include relationships. Okay, I'm not afraid to say this anymore. There are too many people BSing their way into relationships with all kinds of agendas, and they keep thinking that they're such hot, you know what, that they can trick God, or maybe they don't even believe much in God, and it all is eventually going to come up to the surface. Even if they get married, the sin will not leave. Sin will not leave until it's repented. Sin has an effect. You cannot get around truth. Okay, and that's what's going on. I'm not going to sit around with this Pollyanna thing anymore, especially as the times get worse. We clearly see the truth bubbling up, whether it be in politics, whether it be in health, whether it be in relationships. There's the facades must end. Okay. And one of the facades is that we are just fine. We put on these fake smiles, and really we have wounds from the past that we need to go back. We need to go back, everyone. We have to go back to the days where we were hurt. That hurting child in, oh, I don't know. I never went to middle school. I was homeschooled up into high school. But I think people start having feelings fourth grade even. You know, it's just budding then. Fifth grade, sixth grade, you definitely start seeing. I'm a teacher. You start seeing it. Definitely high school, all kinds of crap. And then college, it's already over. You're already dead on arrival. You've just sold your soul. Screw it. You're a complete libertine. You're going to drink until you drop. You've already given up on love, sadly enough. So it's like, like 22 is the new jilted 38 years old. It's pretty sad. Um, but we need to go back there. Um, Elizabeth, I have to disagree. It was around during the Common Core. The Common Core is like the final form, but yes, it started in this educational corporate system, and the main thrust of it is, like I said, we have a bunch of babies raising kids who are too awkward and afraid to talk about this all important issue of what's going on with their kids emotionally. They have, whether or not they are conscious of it or not, they have this big insecurity that they don't want to talk about it because all that matters is money and getting through college. Now, I'm coming from the stance of an upper to middle class liberal area, geographically speaking. So, yes, there are people that um, they're usually like the salt of the earth simple people. There are people that still have healthy families, okay? However, where I'm at and where the mainstream pop culture is at, it's not being promoted and it's not happening. So this doesn't mean that there aren't people that get it, but they're getting it probably through like God's grace or through a local traditional atmosphere of conservative atmosphere. They're not getting it. They're not getting any help from the institutions that are supposed to protect us from error. They're not getting it from the churches. They're not getting it from the schools. They're certainly not getting it from the music and the artistry going on. They're not getting it from the politicians in charge. Okay. So we have to go back to the formation. As you have these poor children left to sink or swim. And honestly, even a Lord of the Flies situation where children have to sink or swim can still work out. I think that, now it's not so much just a sin of omission where no one's helping children understand courtship and dignity and respect and preparing them for that very important time. But now we're trying to pervert them. Now, like that infamous, painting of Jupiter eating his son, it seems like the old are cannibalizing the young. First we have abortion. Um, that's a bald-faced, complete reflection of how bad it's gotten. But now we have LGBT indoctrination, and we have this really screwed up thing of like parents know what's going on in college, and they tell their kids go have fun. Hint, hint, wink, wink. You better get yourself right if you're a professed Christian. You might have a big old millstone tied around your neck right about now. That is not funny. It's nothing to be played with. You know what goes on, especially with women in college. Okay, the fraternities, the sororities, and you think it's a big joke. Well, actually, your money success mindset's a big joke, and is what going to possibly send you to hell. And the issue of romantic love and being twisted about it is more important than your little college degree, especially seeing as how all those jobs got outsourced to China, right, folks? So, and it's super hard to get into medical school anyway. So, a lot of the time, the degree was useless the whole time. So, how about that one? How about that bag of apples? But there's something very twisted going on, and there's no one defending the young. So, what happens is, what I see is the girls are getting indoctrinated with a man hatred through the current version of feminism. Everyone's on the internet, so they can access this garbage even easier than before. And the boys, it seems for several generation, are these like unaffirmed in masculinity, awkward, shy misers. I feel terrible for them. I was one of them anyway, so I should empathize. Who don't know how to approach the girls if they have feelings. And if they're not that, then they're already watching pornography at 8 years old, apparently, is the current earliest age children watch pornography. So it's either that or they know just dirty jokes. That's all they know about sex. And it seems the same with the women, too. So it's just a wonderful, it's just a dandy carnival of fun. I mean, it's just really a hootenanny right now when it comes to how they're raised. And then you have the issue of the fact that the whole spiritual lens is gone, where throughout the course of their life, they don't know God. So the porn makes them agitated and more insecure and more rabid to feel something. There's also a drug problem. The man hate separates the girls from the boys. And so the girls and the boys have like this sex war, right? The war between the sexes, which should really have ended in the early elementary years, but now it's being propelled into 35 to 50 damn years old grown women and men hating each other like a bunch of schoolyard 3-year-olds, okay? You have that going on. And then you have the Disney fairy tale princess thing in the culture where you have like this idealistic kind of fruity version of what the perfect person is. It doesn't really get lived out or tested or exercised, so people just have it in their heads at the same time as also being raunchy and hating men and or hating women. And it's just this big like frag grenade, like those pineapple grenades you'd throw into a building. It's just this grenade exploding of all this confusion going on in their heads. And so the sin is compiling upon sin. And then you have the teachers who are now trying to make them trans, and parents, and trying to make them gay, just to like really just hit you over the head with like, hi, I'm Satan, I'm here, I'm killing everyone, no one cares, hello. It's just, that's what we're seeing. Yeah, I'm getting angry. You should be angry. It's nothing to be cute about. Um, so that's the sociological angle of what's going on. And when is it going to end? I don't know. I do know that we need to arm ourselves. I'm sorry for the background noise. I don't know what's going on downstairs. It's usually quiet. Someone's going on in the parking lot. I don't know. But I hope it doesn't interrupt. Um, I think the education has to start happening. I hope that maybe Dr. Jordan Peterson or someone listens in and maybe he can start chiming up. You know, I have a small audience here. And I also think that people need to be grounded in divine love. We're going to have to shine as spiritual examples for the very blind people today. Now, the first thing we have to talk about is those definitions I mentioned. They came from the ancient Greeks. Now, the ancient Greeks were some strange cats. I really, they're my people, and they have, like, on the one hand they're brilliant, and on the other hand they can get really messed up. They had some good points, however. Within all of their strange Greek gods, which, like I mentioned last broadcast, the Greek gods to me are like I would say, a personalization of what we have in the subconscious, like the realities of life put into divine form. So you have Athena, the goddess of wisdom. She kind of reflects the human element of wisdom and the ideals of wisdom. And you have Zeus. Well, he, well, he is apparently the god of the sky and lightning and justice and patriarchy. But because of the way they saw the gods, they kind of divinized human brokenness and said, look, there's fate, there's destiny, there's human brokenness. We are slaves to these passions. We are slaves to destiny. And so we should worship them because they're also beings, and maybe these gods of these things can help us live a better life, or maybe not. Maybe they'll just throw us off the cliff. Yeah, the Greeks had a very bleak way of looking at the gods. Must be why they loved the philosophers so much. Excuse me. Um, so the one thing they did get right, however, apparently, was their idea of romantic love. Plato and the Greeks did have an understanding that there was something spiritual about romantic love. And you had a Greek god named Eros, where we get the word from. Eros was a male god, but the gods could be both genders. They're kind of transcendent. But he was revered in many of the cults of Greece as the ultimate god because, for the real hippie types, they kind of saw it as an all important thing. And it is. The sexuality is a core element to a lot of things. And they also kind of thought, well, if the universe is connected to our gods, then sexuality, the birth of the universe, must have a sexual element to it. And that's a very common religious idea, by the way. The Egyptians had that, other religions had that. So maybe Eros was responsible for the creation of the universe. I'm not going to get graphic with that. You can just check out their creation stories, and, well, that's what a lot of these religions believed. And how would you worship Eros? Well, they had in their temples something called sacred prostitution. So they believed that, well, sexual pleasure was such a thrill, it was such a drive, that maybe we can harness it to divinize us. Now, you may think, well, that's gross and perverted, and that's true. It was to a particular point. But they were kind of on the border of seeing that the matters of sex do bring us to a higher thing beyond ourselves. Um, it brings us to an ecstasy, right? It's heavenly. If there's a joke, right? If a man was on an island filled with beautiful women, he'd call it paradise. Well, in a funny kind of twisted way, that's true, right? I mean, heaven has to feel good. It has to be a pleasure beyond all pleasures. It has to be the ultimate beauty and love, and that's what we see in our Catholic faith. Now, it isn't just the bodily pleasure, and that's the first problem. Okay, the problem we have going on with um, Eros and how we see it is that it's just a feeling, it's just an emotion. That's what we see in our romance movies. That's what we see in how people treat each other. That's why we see, people getting into all these strange things, and LGBT stuff's okay as long as it feels like it's the thing for me, or it makes me feel good. Then that's love. Love equals love, as the stupid T-shirt at Duke University said. I still got a bone to pick with that one. Is that one still going around? Okay, but like I said in the beginning, the heart of the matter isn't that it's just bad and it's going to ruin your life. It's also that it's a lesser twisted good from something better. Okay, and the Greeks, yeah, they had their issues, okay, but they would, in worshiping this god, they would go into they would do their swinging thing, their brothel thing, but they would use it in a spiritual way. Hashtag Aleister Crowley, to try to worship the thrill of romance and sexuality, and to kind of divinize it. Of course, this led to problems. As the Greeks experimented, they realized, wow, this feels kind of empty. It feels like there's something missing. It feels like all we're getting is sexually transmitted diseases, and we feel kind of gross and messed up after doing this. Some of them are pretty honest. Okay, that's another cool thing about the Greeks. They they were weird, but they were honest people. Perhaps that's why the Lord wanted to spread Christianity there as one of the first places. He likes honest, messed up people that are kind of humble in that way. I found that to be true with the way God often picks his even saints. They can be messed up, but if they're honest and they're humble about it, he can do a lot with that. He can bring you to the heights of holiness. Uh, I hope that's hope for me. um, but that's true, right? So they were honest and they recorded these things. But they saw that this needed some truth. This needed something more than even the bodily pleasure, and that's our issue. So one of the mental exercises I like to do to explain, and I've done this before when I was on the other channel, is if someone pictured their crush, or the person, the physical beauty that would most infatuate them, and you have this ideal person in your brain, and then I want you to copy and paste that ideal person and put them over here, and then put inside them the ideal virtuous person. So the ideal physically beautiful person now has the ideal virtue, and maybe even the ideal personality. Okay. This is what philosophers and theologians and contemplatives experience, and kind of see that there's got to be something beyond just the feeling. Because when you do that, you fall even more in love. Now you're like, oh my gosh, take me. I would die for someone like that in my life, right? Or you might even be, even more interestingly, you might be intimidated. That's something that in my contemplative experiences, I get intimidated by God's love and beauty. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am such a slob, right? That is an actual experience that apparently goes all the way up to Mount Carmel. It's an actual reality of growing in holiness as a contemplative. You get very embarrassed of your shortcomings and sins and God's love. I'll leave that alone for the end. But um, the Greeks in their plays started to realize this, and it's very interesting. Let me just pull up this. They had something called the ladder of love, and that's what I'm trying to explain here. Um, the ladder of love, I'm reading from Wikipedia, but it has good sources, so I checked out the sources. This is real. The ladder of love is a metaphor that relates each step toward being as consecutive rungs of a ladder. Each step closer to the truth further distances love from beauty of the body toward love that is more focused on wisdom and the essence of beauty. The latter starts with carnal attraction of body for body, progressing to a love for body and soul. Eventually, in time, with consequent steps up the ladder, the idea of beauty is eventually no longer connected with the body, but entirely united with being itself. And this is from Eric Symmachus' completion of Pausanias' speech on Eros. He says, decent human beings must be gratified, as well as those that are not as yet decent, so that they might become more decent. And the love of the decent must be preserved. That's pretty Catholic stuff right there. That's actually pretty intelligent. They actually had, some of them, had a mature understanding of the function of romantic love. There's a point to it. There's a truth to it. It's not just a feeling just go, bleh, I just feel, shoot the heroin needle in my arm, baby. Yeah, we're cool. You know, it's more than that. There's a point to it. Now, if only if someone was teaching the young this, you know, I can't even do it because I don't want to step on parents' shoes. I wish someday maybe there'll be, when classical education returns, maybe there'll be a redemption to sex ed, or at least not call it sex ed, romance ed or something. That would be interesting. I'm sure that would lighten up people's days and give them a little bit of context for all their hormones. Plato's Symposium defines two extremes in the process of Platonic love, the entirely carnal and the entirely ethereal. These two extremes of love are seen by the Greeks in terms of tragedy and comedy. According to Diotima in her discussion with Socrates, for anyone to achieve the final rung in the ladder of love, they would essentially transcend the body and rise to immortality, gaining direct access to being. Such a form of love is impossible for a mortal to achieve. What Plato describes, well, that's what they thought. What Plato describes as pregnancy of the body is entirely carnal and seeks pleasure and beauty in bodily form only. This is the type of love that, according to Socrates, is practiced by animals. Now, if this is from Plato. Now, if both these portraits of love, the tragic and the comic, are exaggerations, then we could say that the genuine portrayal of Platonic love is the one that lies between them. The love described is the one practiced by those who are pregnant according to the soul, who partake of both the realm of beings and the realm of being, who grasp being indirectly through the mediation of beings, would be a love that Socrates could practice. Tragedy. Diotima considers the carnal imitation of human beings to the pregnancy of the body to be a form of tragedy, as it separates someone from the pursuit of truth. One would be forever limited to beauty of the body, never being able to access the true essence of beauty. Diotima considers the idea of a mortal having direct access to being to be a comic situation, simply because of the impossibility of it. The offspring of true virtue would essentially lead to a mortal achieving immortality. Wow. So they were seeing darkly what St. Augustine saw. But they thought it was tragic. They thought they couldn't reach that. All right, that is part of the hope that God gives in the Song of Songs, which is an allegory for God warming up the soul in his love to make it that God is our resting place, that he makes us happy, including the romantic side of things. Isn't that interesting? And it's so interesting how eventually St. Paul would visit the Greeks and give them that hope. He would tell them about the hidden, invisible God because they thought you couldn't make it there. And this is something we, for the Catholics listening, have to get over as well. if we want to evangelize, we have to humble ourselves and see that there are smart people of other cultures, even pagan cultures, that see partly. They just don't have the fullness of truth. So let's not be arrogant and look down on them, make the same mistakes as the Spanish conquistadors and people that were way too rough on those that do not understand. Yeah, let's not be modernists, but let's also see that there are people with big brains that could kind of see a little bit of the truth, and that let's be proud of our faith and believe that it has all the answers, and it does. Okay. Um, Sorry, I'm trying not to get dehydrated here. Okay, so what going back to all the messed up stuff I see in the dating sphere, and what St. Valentine would probably cry and roll in his grave if he is already, well, he's not in his grave, he's in heaven, but he's rolling in heaven over what's going on. Um, what I'm seeing is we don't understand how the three different kinds of love. You see, Christian love goes beyond the Greek eros. Christian romance ideally incorporates all three into an even higher love. And because we're living like a bunch of damn pagans, even worse than some of the pagan people, and we have a pagan way of thinking, we see things falling apart due to this ignorance. So we have, for example, problems with Eros. The people that are only stuck on Eros, those are the hedonists, okay? Those are the people that just see the body. Okay, that's the Cardi B stuff. That's the pornography. That's the hookup culture. That's the I'm down, I'm 6 beers down the drain, and I can barely speak right. I'm in college. Everyone is wearing the least amount of clothes possible. I can't even have a conversation with someone because I'm not lucid enough. I don't even remember what I did last night. We're actually more scared to go on a coffee date than to have rampant, promiscuous, drunken sex. That's actually true. People are more scared to go on a coffee date than to have a one night stand. Apparently, that's an actual study that came out. Okay, that's the people stuck in Eros. Then you have the people that are stuck in, I would say, like filial. Now, there is a whole ugly side to the dating thing, and this is creepy. There are these creepy plasticas chicas, as Elizabeth in her comment section, she brought up this Spanish term to me. There are these people that like treat marriage like a trophy. Like they get married like some kind of feudal king and queen. They don't really love each other. They have like maybe mistresses, or they just kind of do it because they just want to settle down. A lot of these people are scary. There's some freaking sociopaths that do this, men and women, but particularly like they a lot of the time they've had their party days, and now it's time to settle down to look good and make some money and just have kids for the sake of it. And these are the people that are usually horrible parents, and they eventually divorce anyway. So they're lacking in eros and agape. And then you have people, well, there's almost no one stuck in agape because no one does anything for anyone these days. But I would say there are people that they're they it is possible to have someone imbalanced in agape where without eros you lose a lack of self-love. Okay, there's people that are like people pleasers, or people that spread themselves too thin, and they need to have a healthy self-love. Eros can give you a healthy self-love. When you feel loved by someone personally, you want to reflect that very personal love to them, and you feel loved. And that eros can help agape, because a lot of the time when there's a people pleaser, people can kind of see through it, and they seem kind of like they're kind of like frayed wires. They may not have a sense of self-worth or self-love. they may not really be efficient in what they do. I know only a few people like that, sadly, because no one seems to want to go out of the way to do anything for anyone. But they're there; they exist, and so agape needs eros and filial. It can also turn to something that's very kind of morbid. There's Lent's coming up. I'm going to do a whole podcast, um, kind of preparing myself and maybe others for Lent. But agape needs the other two loves, um, and also I would say eros needs agape. You know, you have like again, like the mental experiment I showed you. People that get with someone that doesn't care about them and they're kind of like enslaved to that person, an abusive relationship. Okay. And it's very sad. It seems that a lot of people are enslaved by their own ignorance and they have to just pick someone or settle down, even if it's poisonous. I'm not saying perfectionism. I'm saying an actual toxic person you're just going to go with because you just have to. It's probably a kind of addiction. You feel so lonely and wounded. You need someone. That's another problem I see, people jumping into these relationships with. And I know I have that issue. Thank God he spared me from making some big mistakes that would have ruined my life. Um, so I think those are my main points. I still have a little bit of time, so I'm going to move on to this spiritual aspect, which is also extremely important. Okay. Now, I could go on and on again about philosophically what's wrong and how we need a better community. That's where filial love comes in. We need people to speak up. But at the end of the day, we need God. Okay. I think a big application of prayer is for the single people, not just for the religious. Because God's love can help someone when they're in those dark times. It could help that person struggling with their hormones in middle school and high school. His love and wisdom can bring peace. And there's also the issue, even as a single adult, not only do you have a long time often to wait to run to someone that is healthy for you, that has your same values, but you might not just see the next day. I mean, who are we to say that we're entitled to a relationship? Have you ever checked out the horrors of war in the 20th century and disease and all that stuff? You may just be knocked off the next day. You may not see the light of day. Um, we cannot follow the Greek god Eros and act like he's a divine being who's entitled to us. We have to go deeper, and in order to go deeper, we need a connection with an intimacy with God. And it's always been in the church. And God's love surpasses all humans' love. So when you experience that love and intimacy of God, you're not as intimidated by the temptations of the flesh. It's not perfect, but you're not as afraid to go there into those wounds where you were hurt because you can come in with the big guns. You're not as intimidated by that person who's kind of like a spider web. You may have some kind of attraction, but it's not good for you. Um, you have also a context. If there is a bone to pick I have with Valentine's Day, the one big flaw is, and this is something the Lord alludes to in the scripture when he says you have to love more than just your family. I have an issue with this. I'm trying to teach my folks about this, but we have an issue where people get all excited about marriage and spousal love because there's sex involved, and some of it is leads to holiness. But are you do any of these people and I'm talking about the average modern day relationship, how many of them have gone out of their way to help, let's say, someone that doesn't look good, or gone out of their way? Where is that energy towards helping the poor or the spiritually poor, or standing up for what's right, or helping someone that won't be physically sexually attracted to you? I think that's kind of suspect. I think that kind of shows that we have a twisting going on and we need to get our priorities straight. I'm not saying that it's all wrong, romantic feelings are wrong. I'm just saying that's kind of sus, as the kids say. When you don't see these very same people get all excited for their weddings and all that, and they don't lift a finger to help out anyone, they don't forgive anyone. And then they're like, oh, I don't know why I have such a miserable relationship. Why do I hate my guts? I'm with this person. We have sex. Why do we hate each other's guts? Why are we so bored? Well, maybe you ought to listen to what I'm saying here. Okay? You need all three loves. You need God to put things in context. Even the Greeks saw it as a very, these are the swingers here. They saw it as like an intoxicating poison, like a spell, an enchantment. They knew how dangerous things could get. I don't know about that, Sweet. What about the people who got stuck with each other during the extended lockdowns in 2020? I hope it's okay. uh, I hope things aren't getting worse. I hope people will learn to love each other. But I don't know. Um, another point I like to make on putting things in its place is, well, with science, we can see that a lot of these romantic feelings are biochemical. So, if you don't have the other two loves, how is this any different from pulling out, your opium or your heroin and just shooting that up? Uh, I've talked to heroin addicts, and they say, yeah, there's a connection there. Heroin is like romantic love for those that never had it in their lives. There's all kinds of wisdom from people struggling with substance abuse and alcoholism that definitely points towards this as well. Um, so let's see. I guess I'll end with just a few references. I hope this inspires you all to pray. I hope this inspires for those that are Catholic to see that we have the solution. Uh, thanks to all of the bishops, no one seems to be using it. Bishops, you rock, man. You rock. You guys are doing great. But there's plenty of things within our faith in our church that are right at the heart of all these issues. You have the Eucharist, for example. I find the Eucharist to be at the top of that ladder of love, right? There's no greater love than this. There's no greater love than Christ's passion, right? He's beyond just a mere sensual experience. He becomes one with us when he becomes one with our being in the Eucharist. Where is that kind of talk? What about the Holy Trinity? There's so much about how the Holy Trinity has a union beyond all unions. What about the Song of Songs? No one's talking about that. What about what Pope Benedict said and Saint Pope John Paul II, right? The theology of the body. Here's a quote from Pope Benedict. Let me just pull it up here. Pope Benedict says, if Eros is at, this is in his encyclical, I linked it in the description. If Eros is at first mainly covetous and ascending, a fascination for the great promise of happiness, in drawing near to the other, it is less and less concerned with itself, increasingly seeks the happiness of the other, is concerned more and more with the beloved, bestows itself and wants to be there for the other. The element of agape thus enters into this love, for otherwise Eros is impoverished and even loses its own nature. On the other hand, man cannot live by oblative, descending love alone. He cannot always give, he must also receive. Anyone who wishes to give love must also receive love as a gift. Certainly, as the Lord tells us, one can become a source from which rivers of living water flow. It's from John 7:37 to 38. Yet to become such a source, one must constantly drink anew from the original source, which is Jesus Christ, from whose pierced heart flows the love of God. Pope Benedict is awesome. He's basically backing up what I'm saying. You have G.K. Chesterton, who is kind of I'm not going to quote him because he kind of says it in kind of an allegory, but he always believed that all the good things can be meditated upon and can build up our our muscles of romantic love. And just like Pope Benedict says, as our holy romantic love builds, we can give to others and treat others with dignity. Um, so it's all part of God's plan. Um, what else do I have here? The theology of the body. There's a whole book based on that, on what I'm saying. I have one more quote. Let's see. Okay, this is from First Things, the website for firstthings.com, Lust and Augustine. For Augustine, love is the most basic appetite of the soul. It is the soul's movement outward and union with all that is good, whether temporal or eternal. This outward movement is a form of ecstasy, a reflection of God's internal ecstatic movement from the Father through the Son and the Spirit. It is intrinsic to the human person as a creature that cannot sustain its own existence. In short, God has designed humans to be lovers. The question is how to direct this outward movement, thus properly ordering one's love. Charity emerges from loving God above all and loving everything else in and through love of God. Privileging temporal goods over the eternal God that is God, that the eternal good that is God turns love into concupiscence. Concupiscence becomes a shorthand for a new reality. Death's grip upon the body snares humans in a cycle moving from one created good to another in a desperate bid to find release. Humans yearn for the freedom to transcend their own condition in union with the good, yet they seek their transcendence in temporal realities that can never deliver it. Okay? So St. Augustine is backing this up as well. And that's it. My time's pretty much up. I guess I can look at the Q&A, but I hope this inspires those that are contemplatives here to see that we have a solution. I hope this inspires people listening that we need to recontextualize our whole faith if we want to be serious in this culture war. And let me just read some comments, and I'll let you guys go. Elizabeth already let herself go. She's running off. See you, Elizabeth. Hope you enjoyed it. Sweet says, in my experience, it is best not to pursue someone who intimidates you, but rather find someone who has strong Christian values and who loves truth. Of course, there needs to be some attraction too. Prayer connects us to the source of love, who is God. Then we are filled and we can give love to others. Okay? So, all hail the new age of the Christian mystic in these times. That's all I can say. And if you like this broadcast, you can check out the rest of the episodes of my playlist. We will get more esoteric, more spiritual, into those higher spheres from now on. And the next broadcast will be called Against Scrupulosity. We're going to talk about how we need to look at sorrow versus depression, and again, how we drop the ball in forming our young, and all kinds of good stuff for Lent. So that's it. Check you later, guys. God bless, and enjoy Valentine's Day.